You walk in and you know that your colleague next to you doesn't think that you should exist.
The gay Latino who works on guns and abortion, not a progressive.
Do you guys have any ideas of how to solve that issue broadly within the Democratic Party?
In my eyes, a Jew is a Jew.
Welcome back, everybody. I missed you, and I hope you had a fantastic holiday. As many of us just celebrated Passover, this next part should sound familiar. If I told you my guest today is a school board president, Arizona state representative, and only the second Latina Jewish legislator ever elected in American politics, Dayenu, that would be enough. And if I told you my second guest is also an Arizona state representative, since she was 25, has a license plate that says Zionist, and was the first Latina Jewish legislator ever elected in American politics, Dayenu, that would be enough. And if I told you my third guest co-founded the Arizona House LGBTQ caucus, survived a mass shooting where he helped save Congresswoman Gabby Giffords' life, and is currently running for Congress himself in Arizona's 7th District, Dayenu, that too would be enough. But here's the kicker. They're all siblings. Please welcome the trio from another Theo, Consuelo, Alma, and Daniel Hernandez. Welcome, you guys.
Finally.
Thank you.
Finally, we did it.
We did it.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so Alma, you were the first Hernandez that I met through social media, where you are quite loud and proud about all of your various identities, which is exactly what we need. You make it look easy. Is it?
No, it's not easy. I would be lying if I said it was. I think at the end of the day, there are times where I love what I do, and I would do really nothing differently when it comes to speaking out and being vocal for the community, but sometimes it's tough. My brother actually moved in as my roommate. Part of the reason is because of a lot of the hate that I was getting. I got doxxed, had to meet with the FBI in Tucson.
Oh, wow.
A lot of that. So no, it's definitely not easy. It's really changed my life, I think I would say. I mean, I've been involved in this since we were in high school. Mm-hmm. So it's nothing new. Like, it's just always been a part of our life.
I want to lower rent because of the unsafe living conditions.
Yeah, we're going to give him a discount there. But after October 7th, I think it really changed. The rhetoric you mentioned, I have my Zionist license plate that I've had, by the way, for like 4 years. I actually just recently switched it. I had to change it. Not because I wanted to, but for my safety.
Yeah.
I had someone try to run me off the freeway. People were calling in my license plate to the police. They tried saying that I was a drunk driver. There were a lot of accusations and things that were going on. But again, I had that license plate for 4 years prior and never had any problems, right?
Wow.
So yeah, it's been tough. The struggle's real.
Sorry. It sucks.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be, but it sucks. Consuelo, as Alma mentioned, you and I first met doing an Israel Policy Forum cohort. You and Alma both converted to Judaism in 2015 after learning you had a Jewish grandfather. I'd love to hear the story about that. How did you guys learn that information, and how did it snowball from there?
So we started learning about our story pretty late in life. I think we were 14.
Late at the grand old age of like 20.
No, in high school. In high school. My brother got us involved in politics at 14 and 15. And after the shooting, people wanted to know who my brother was. And then they started digging up our family's background. And then somehow my mom didn't tell us a lot about our family history. And I'm not really sure why, but when people dug up our history, that's when we started learning about ourselves and our family background in Mexico.
Because someone else presented you with information?
Correct, yes. And I was already in a Jewish Latino teen coalition in high school. So I was meeting other Jewish Latinos and Jewish students in high school from all across our city. And I had never met other Jewish Latinos because we grew up in a predominantly Latino and African-American community where most people were either, Baptist, Catholic, but we weren't really exposed to a lot of Jewish people. But I was already lobbying members of Congress through that program.
You were participating just as Latina?
Yeah, as Latina, until I realized that I actually had some background. Then we started going to Sabans through APAC. So it kind of just snowballed from there. I made the decision to go through the process. We were already members of our congregation for about, was it 7 years or something?
I did mine before you.
Yeah, she did.
Way before.
Yeah, way before. I just hit the...
What, you converted before her?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, long time. Okay.
Yes, but I just hit the age where I thought, okay, I need to get my life together and I want to have a family and I want to be able to have a family that has values that they can learn from me, right? And my mom, she didn't really grow up with a lot of her Jewish family. They were in another city, but she knew about it, but they had to convert to Catholicism.
Why did they have to convert to Catholicism?
Because it wasn't accepted to be Jewish, right? In the area, I think it was Chihuahua, right, Alma? Cananea, yeah. So some of their names are like Librada, which is liberated. So we started learning about a lot of that history, and I made the decision because I wanted to have like a foundation in my life. I felt like I was already living a very Jewish life at a very young age. I just didn't really know it.
What was resonating for you about Judaism and Jewishness without you even knowing that you had a Jewish link?
I was meeting other Jewish Latinos and Latinas, and they were just like me. And I felt like they shared a lot of the same values. As Latinos, we value family. And we value our elders taking care of each other. We joke around that like our grandparents were environmentalists and we didn't realize until we were older. And in the Jewish culture, we, celebrate the environment. And there's so many different aspects to Jewish life that I felt like I grew up with. I just didn't really know it.
Daniel, I'm going to ask you a question in a second. Alma, we heard why Consuelo converted, but you did it before her. What led you down that path?
I just always felt more connected to Jewish community, Jewish life than I did to anything else. And quite frankly, we didn't grow up like religious at all. Like we didn't go to church every weekend. Like that was not a thing. I didn't learn anything from it, right? Like I didn't have an actual connection. Like I didn't really know. I truly did. I even now, I still don't really understand, quite frankly. Right. But that's just because we didn't grow up that way. And I think when my sister mentioned that she decided later on in life that she wanted to do it for herself and when she has a family, I feel that that was my mentality, but when I was much younger. So we met Rabbi Stephanie Aaron after the shooting happened. She was actually Gabby Giffords' rabbi as well. And we just really hit it off and we became good friends. I decided, I'm like, this is what I want to do. After knowing my mom's family, like some of the history, like that they converted to Catholicism to be able to fit in, and they didn't really have an opportunity to live like a vibrant Jewish life. Yeah. And that to me, just like truly, I was like, that sucks, right? Like that's terrible. So I decided to take it upon myself. I started going when I was like almost 16 with Rabbi Stephanie Aaron to services. I would show up every week. Started learning to Hebrew.
Only she did that now.
Oh, right. I'm on the board, so it's just so life is busy. But anyhow, started going to classes. Obviously, the journey, everyone has their own path. I believe that it's something that you're not forced to do, right? Like this is something you decide to do, and it's honestly not easy. It's difficult. It's a huge commitment, I will say. And when I went to my parents, my mom was obviously very emotional. She still is very emotional about it. Like we've talked about it and she just thinks it's a really nice thing for us that we decided to do. She's always trying to force Daniel, but that's a whole different story. We'll let him talk about it. But my father told me, if you're going to do this, you're going to finish. So here I was 16, not really, understanding the commitment I was about to make. But I ended up doing my conversion. I had my Hebrew naming ceremony, as I'm sure now that you have babies, you know how exciting those can be. And for me, it was really important to honor my mom's family. So for my Hebrew name, we decided to go, my mother's grandmother's name was Mercedes, and we used the M for Malka. And then we added a special touch because we're just special, I guess. Librada was her mother's name, which means liberated. Right. So Malka Librada, which is Queen of Liberation, in my opinion. So it's just been a big part of my life, and it's made me very happy. In fact, our father was buried within our Jewish cemetery. And that to us was, sorry, I'm going to get emotional.
That's okay. Don't need to be sorry.
We did everything as a family together. Sorry.
It's okay.
And my father knew how important this part of my life was, and my sister as well. And we celebrated all the holidays. We did everything together. And my father was so happy to be involved and just be there. Like there were times where he would go to services. He would just tell me to pick him up. Sorry. He would tell me to just pick him up and he would go and sit with me, you know, for Shabbat services. The day of his funeral, there were a lot of rabbis that were there.
Wow.
And
I think we had 6 rabbis at my dad's funeral.
We brought everyone together from Chabad to the Reform to like conservative. Like we had everyone there.
I think our rabbi said she's never been to a funeral with that many
That
rabbis.
many rabbis that are not from the same community.
so
He
amazing.
wasn't Jewish.
And he wasn't even Jewish.
He wasn't even Jewish. But I think that goes to show like how committed we have been as a family to support each other.
That's beautiful.
And the fact that even though he wasn't Jewish, he still felt like he was a part of the community, right? Like he went to everything. In fact, our parents donated, our synagogue hadn't had new prayer books for like 30 years. It was 30 years. We hadn't had new prayer books.
Sure.
And our parents decided to donate those about 4 years ago in honor of my mom's family.
That's the model of how you would dream parents would embrace and support their children. It's really special. Daniel, I hear your mom is trying to force you to convert. Where you sit with all this? I mean, you've been watching their journeys. I'm sure you have your own journey with
It's fun
everything.
being the token goy and the token gay. I just became the chair of a Whiter Bridge, which is an organization.
You're the chair now.
I'm the chair. So Whiter Bridge, we are an organization that's working on bringing the LGBTQ community in the U.S. and Israel together, combating anti-Semitism, and really making sure that we are presenting what it means to be queer and a Zionist. And I say that as somebody who is not officially a Jew, but I might as well be, because the amount of anti-Semitic hate that I get, you know, for me, talking about why I haven't, I joke that even if I were to convert, I'd probably be a secular Jew anyways, but I already do so much that most people already assume that I'm a Jew. And I always have to say, I'm not George Santos. I'm not claiming to be something that I'm not. But you know, whether it's cooking for Passover, my sister Alma loves to invite people for dinner, but doesn't
Everyone's
cook.
invited.
So then
That's a good tag team.
So then I end up
clean.
cooking a 16-pound brisket and a 6-course meal for people for Pesach, and then I'm like having to explain to them what everything is. So for me, I think what has been important is really looking at what's been going on in our community, both in the LGBTQ community, because, you know, as a very openly and loud out gay man who is in elected office, I've seen the hatred that the LGBTQ community gets. Mm-hmm. So for me, my relationship with the Jewish community started earlier than I think either one of my sisters, because it started when I was in 3rd grade. When I was in 3rd grade, one of our teachers who Alma actually got to work with, do you want to say her name?
Teresa Dolgoff.
Teresa.
She's a Holocaust survivor and she taught all 3 of us actually.
Yes.
Wow.
But in 3rd grade, around the liberation of Auschwitz, she wanted to take a moment to honor and to talk about it. But when you're talking to 3rd graders about the Holocaust, it's a heavy subject. It's difficult.
Yeah.
But when other kids laughed about people being from a place called Hungary, it really stuck with me what she was saying, which is when I talked about my family, I have 2 sisters. My mom is one of 13 kids. My dad was one of 5. For us, family, a small family gathering is like 80 people, because that's how many first cousins we think we have. We're not actually sure.
Blessings.
A lot of family. But when Ms. Dolgoff would talk about her family, it was her mom, her dad, and her. And that really stuck with me, the idea that you could have an entire group go after another group, and that there was so much hatred that they would try and not only make their lives harder, but literally kill each other.
Yeah.
4th going into 5th grade, I gravitated towards every book I could get my hands on in the public library in Pima County, which is where we grew up, on the Holocaust and the Second World War. And then that eventually led me to this idea of a new country, the state of Israel. So I started, I think, becoming a Zionist in 5th grade.
Wow.
Because I was learning about how people hated each other and killed each other during the Holocaust. It's not a great book, but at 10 years old, reading the medical experiments at Auschwitz, not a super appropriate book.
Do not recommend.
Do not recommend. But it was something that was really foundational for me as I was learning English. So learned English, read these books about the Holocaust and how awful that was and how awful anti-Semitism was. Then got a little older, and when I was 16 and 17, wanted to do something else. And I started working on my very first campaign, the campaign for Hillary Rodham Clinton when she ran for president the first time in 2007.
This is while you were in high school still.
This is while I'm in high school. And I was actually sitting in a classroom that was like an American government class. And I'm looking around the room and I'm seeing 40-ish older white men looking back at me. And it was pictures of the president. And I'm sitting in a class that's mostly girls, all Latino, basically, because it was like 95% Latino class. And I asked the teacher just one day, when have we ever had a woman president or a person of color? And he said, well, women are too emotional to be president. And I never see a person of color becoming president anytime soon. So here's a room full of Latino kids, mostly girls, and us being told by the person who's our teacher, who's supposed to encourage us, you women, too emotional to be president. And for those of you that are the boys, you're the wrong color.
Wow.
And I didn't like that answer. So I went online, and a few weeks later, actually got an email from somebody when I signed up on Hillary Clinton's website. Didn't know anything about politics. And I just went online and I signed up to volunteer. And the people that reached out to me were these older Jewish women who called themselves the Yentas for Hillary. So it went from third grade, having this first exposure to the Holocaust and anti-Semitism, to now here I am getting my first taste in politics. And who are the people that I'm becoming close with? Older Jewish ladies, many of whom were the children of Holocaust survivors or Holocaust survivors themselves. I'm seeing discrimination as a Latino. I'm seeing discrimination as a person who's LGBTQ. I need to make sure that I'm not doing things that are making it harder for my Jewish friends. So how do we stand in solidarity? How do we come together? Because we're all having these challenges. We're all having these fights. So when going back to your original question, why haven't I converted? You know, maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know. I think for me, especially after our dad's passing, it makes you reevaluate things, because there are a lot of things that you think will always be there, can always get around to it, whether it's talking to our mom's aunt who lives just a couple miles away from here and being like, shit, we should
probably call.
We should have just called her and been like, hey, let's get together. But I think for me, it's important that as I'm figuring out what my next steps are, really being centered on the importance of family.
Yeah.
And so much of our family's values has become, for them, the Judaism, but for me, the Zionism, and making sure that we're doing everything we can to support and to stand back and fight against anti-Semitism, because it's so rampant. We see the attacks on the LGBTQ community. We see the attacks on immigrants. So we're all in this fight together. We may all just be wearing different hats when we're showing up to the marches.
I think, Daniel, your story is going to really touch a lot of people because of how organically you came to love and support Jewish people and Israel in a time where I know so many people in my audience are like, everybody hates us. And there's like no one standing with us who isn't Jewish. And hearing your story, like there are Daniel Hernandez's.
And here's the funny thing. When they were both, well, mostly Alma, because Alma did it a little younger, looking at the conversion process, I'm like, I have 3 rabbis you can talk to. This one's not going to call you back because you're not Chabad, because you're not originally Jewish. This one will ask you if you're marrying a Jew. And then this one you'll fall in love with because Stephanie Aaron is the best rabbi on the planet.
Shout out to Stephanie Aaron.
Stephanie Aaron.
Best rabbi on the planet.
But I will say, I will say that I have a lot of love and respect for the Orthodox community as well. You know, my boyfriend goes to Chabad, and I go with him every week to his rabbi's house, right? Like it's just a part of life and a part of what I do. And if you go and see the bills that I've run over the years, whether it's been in honor of the Rebbe or whether it's been like mandatory Holocaust education, you know, I try my best because in my eyes, a Jew is a Jew.
They hate you all the same, according to your friends online.
You know, that's exactly right.
I don't see a difference in my opinion. And I think one of the things that I've learned after October 7th is that putting aside, regardless of what level of observance you're in, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you are seen by others who don't know you or your story as a Jew. And if you cannot recognize that and be respectful to our other fellow Jews, regardless of opinion, that's a problem, right? We have enough hate from the outside world. We do not need to continue that hate within.
Certainly believe that on this show.
To piggyback off of what Alma said, as a youngish elected Jewish Latina official.
How old are you?
32.
Very young.
I feel old. I feel really old though.
What a young person thing to say.
But we experience racism at every point. And there's different layers, right? So we're not only Latinas, we're Jewish Latinas, and we are very proud and own it. But I never really understood what it was like to experience anti-Semitism until this was about 10 years ago. I was a student at the University of Arizona, and I was already going to Hillel, and I hadn't converted yet. I mean, this is how much it was part of our life already. I just wasn't ready to make anything official. There was one of the students, we were in a circle, and he was afraid to be seen, and I never understood that, and that really stuck with me. And he didn't want to wear his kippah because he said that growing up, people used to spit on him. And I was just shocked because when we grew up, like, we were taught if someone don't fight back unless you're in real danger, then you do something about it.
And then you win.
And then you win, my dad used to tell us. But like, he always told us, like, stand up for yourself. Always be proud. Show up who you are. To me, I just couldn't understand how some of the people that I was part of this group with at Hillel were afraid to be seen. And it was such a shocker to me. And now, being a Jewish Latina, very proud Jewish Latina, I sometimes forget to wear my Star of David, but I feel it with our own colleagues, right? On both sides of the aisle. And I think that's a misconception in politics that, like, anti-Semitism is only growing on the left, right? It's also on the right.
I run a lot of the Jewish pro-Israel related bills since I got there. I'm in my last term now, going on my 7 years. I feel very old and, getting ready to retire from the House.
Wow.
But at the end of the day, I run these bills because I think it's important to do it, whether people like them or not, that I am elected. I have my right to be able to run the bills that I want. And I've run a lot. We got mandatory Holocaust education done in Arizona. We got the IRA definition, for those that don't know, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition, very long, but could be controversial depending on who you ask as well. We got that done a few years ago, anti-BDS bills, so that we opened up a trade office.
Legislators to Israel for the first time ever.
We started a commission on the review of anti-Semitism in higher education. The governor is going to officially, she just appointed the members to this commission. Me and my sister worked really hard and were able to secure $7 million in the budget last year in a deficit for the creation and establishment of the first Holocaust Education Center in Phoenix,
wow,
which is one of the largest cities, and we didn't have one. So we worked really hard on that. So this year, the bill that my sister is talking about is my encampment bill. Encampments will be taken down on university and college campuses.
If they're not authorized.
But that's been our little battle that we're in right now at the moment.
And you said a Republican Jewish member shot it down?
Yeah, voted against it for reasons that really did not make any sense to me. But he's a part of the Freedom Caucus, and in the House, there's 4 of us, 1 in the Senate. 5 of us out of the 90 members total. Like, it's not a lot, right? If you think about it, if you put it into perspective, we should be supporting each other when it comes to bills that protect our community.
In what ways would you guys say you're feeling anti-Jewish attitudes politically from your colleagues on the right and the left?
I want to laugh because I feel like on my side of the aisle, they were trolling me.
Oh yeah.
My Democratic caucus sat me next to probably one of the most outspoken pro-Palestinian activists.
Anti-Israel.
Anti-Israel. She has a keffiyeh in her seat.
Mm-hmm.
And
a Palestinian
flag. That's who I'm sitting next to.
That's fun.
That's lots of fun.
So that doesn't exactly feel supportive.
No. Oh my goodness. No. You walk in and you know that your colleague next to you doesn't think that you should exist. And will go online and say she's not anti-Semitic for voting against bills that support Jewish students. I feel like everyone should feel safe wherever they are.
Sure.
So it's just a very different environment.
And where do you guys feel it coming from the right?
So again, it goes back to the idea, like far left of our caucus, far right of their caucus, they always meet in the middle. I always say the crazies always unite. And Daniel tells me not to call them crazies, but at the end of the day, it is very easy to hate Jews. Like you could blame the Jews literally for everything, like the weather, or the whatever. Okay. And I've noticed on the right side, they don't say like, oh, we're anti, the Jewish community or anti-Israel. But the things that they say and do definitely line up, and they meet in the middle with the far left of our party.
And I would just say, now being retired from the Arizona State Legislature, what I'm seeing, and this is one of the things that I'm really proud of, is the fight against anti-Semitism within the LGBTQ community. So I'm the chair of a Wider Bridge, and one of the things that we started after October 7th was Queers Against Anti-Semitism, because what we saw was this really funny and kind of odd thing where a lot of folks who were in the LGBTQ community were really aligning themselves against Israel. Yeah. And it wasn't even supporting Palestine as much as it was being anti-Israel. And I think that's the thing that at first was disappointing. And then I said, we have to fight back, and we have to make sure that we are not letting people get away with the idea that you can use coded language, because I think what we saw a lot of on the left, at least, was this idea, well, I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm just an anti-Zionist. Right. So by me saying I'm an anti-Zionist, I'm going to say all of these really awful things. But then if I say I'm not a anti-Semite, but I'm just an anti-Zionist, they can get away with things. And I think calling it out for what it is, which is anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, is important. But in the LGBTQ community especially, I spent so much time. I honestly, at this point, have lost count of how many times I've been to Israel, which is a privilege. And I think it's an honor, and it's something that is really important to me, because I get to go, and I don't just go on these trips because it's a lot of fun to go to Tel Aviv Pride, but I go because it's so important to build those relationships, because we have a lot of shared struggles in the LGBTQ community. Israel and the U.S. are not perfect by any means.
No country is.
No country is. But when we hold one country, and when we say Israel has to be held up to this pedestal, and then when they don't meet it, they're automatically all bad and they shouldn't exist.
Right.
When Donald Trump was president the first time, I didn't stop supporting the United States of America. Right. Just because I disagree with, the party or the policies of a government doesn't mean that I think that that country should no longer exist. And I think that's one of the problems that we see. And that's where right now, I think on the left, my biggest fight, because they're holding up the fort amongst the legislators and the elected officials. We actually took, 17 legislators last year to Israel on a solidarity mission.
Bipartisan?
Yeah. It was bipartisan. Cool. We were worried that we would lose the Democrats because, a lot of heat came on them. The governor at one point even spoke out and said that it was irresponsible to take a trip during the middle of the legislative session. Despite all that, we had 17. It was an even split, 8 Democrats, 8 Republicans, and then we had a statewide elected. So they're holding down the fort with the electeds and, being strong champions for everybody in this community. So my role now, as I'm somebody who's out of office, is making sure that we are taking the fight to folks. We're not responding. Yeah. We are going out there. We're being aggressive. We're being the voices for those who are coming to us, because we're holding Queers Against Anti-Semitism events all over the country. And the number one thing we're hearing is, I'm afraid to be both Jewish and LGBTQ. Yeah. I'm afraid to be a Zionist because I don't think we should discriminate against anybody, and somebody who's LGBTQ. And when people are coming to us and saying, I'm fearful to be who I am, and they're in the LGBTQ community, it breaks my heart, because we've fought for so many years to come to where we are, to now have these safe spaces that are excluding anybody because of your support for Israel or because you're Jewish. Yeah. Because I joked earlier that I get a lot of anti-Semitism. I do. And I'm not even a Jew. And that's the thing, that because I've been outspoken that we shouldn't allow anti-Semites to go behind this cover of saying it's anti-Zionism, therefore it's okay to say that you're money grubbing, or, all of these things, which are just these tropes. So I think that's where, while they're holding up the fight amongst the electeds, I'm doing everything I can and working really hard right now on the left to make sure that we are creating safe spaces that are truly safe for everybody. 2 questions. I have a follow-up for you and a follow-up for you guys. For that Israel trip, did you see an impact?
During that time, after October 7th, we went, it was like 2 months after October 7th. It was still very fresh. It still is, right? We're almost 2 years, and I still cry every time I hear the stories of those that are still being held captive, right? It breaks my heart. And it's still so recent for a lot of us. And I feel that it's still a very emotional time for Jews in general.
An ongoing trauma. Stop.
For sure. And one thing I noticed was when we went on the trip, we even took individuals who perhaps didn't have the best perception of Israel and its policies, right? We wanted
That's what I hope would go.
We wanted them to go. I said, I really would love for you guys to join us and ask all the questions you may have. Like, we didn't script it by any means of, we restricted it to only people that agreed with. No, in fact, we met the Speaker of the Knesset, and then we met with the opposition. Like, we met with everybody. We met with the Palestinian reporter, journalist who lived in the West Bank. Like, believe me, we exposed people, even quite frankly, to some ideas that I didn't even agree with, but we thought it was important, right?
Yeah.
I wanted them to be able to hear this and ask the questions, and they did. And I will tell you that when we came back from that trip, the rhetoric and the very easy going on Twitter and saying whatever you wanted just to go along on the bandwagon was not as bad as we were expecting it to be honest. We came back and things were a little more calm than we expected.
So funny enough, Alma and I split the calls. Like, I decide I'm going to call the furthest to the left in our caucus. You'll call the Republicans and some of the people in the middle. And we didn't push the three of us. Our goal was for them to learn by asking and doing versus us telling them how to think. And one of the perfect examples was there's a Native American representative, and
In her 80s.
in her 80s, and she was faster than any of us walking around. Towards the end of the trip, on her own, we would have debriefs before dinner, and on her own, she was telling all of us, sharing with us how emotional she was, that she didn't understand that the Jewish people also faced the same struggles that she did, her and her people did. And I was just like, that is exactly why, like, bringing people that have never been to Israel is important, because she connected the dots on her own.
Yeah.
And she was like,
She said, as an Indigenous woman,
we are fighting for land that was taken away from us. We're coming back to our ancestral lands. Exiled. And she said, and the Jewish people are experiencing the same struggles.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. And we didn't say anything. And we had another colleague who initially was so uncomfortable with going with us that he asked us, like, I don't want to be in pictures, all of these things. And we're like, okay, that's fine. You do whatever feels comfortable for you. And then approached us after the trip and said, like, I get it now. And I'm like, wow.
The same one that asked about if it was true that they were.
Oh yeah, he did ask.
He asked questions that
we told him
about.
This isn't filtered, so ask whatever your heart desires. And we were at dinner, and he asked one of the members, right, of the Knesset, are you committing genocide? Mm-hmm. And I think most of the people in the room, like, kind of like, like, everyone was like, really? Like, are you really?
Did he come out hot with it, or was just like a
curiosity?
He legitimately.
I'm glad he asked that.
Yeah. It legitimately, I think he did it. Although I didn't agree with the question, mind you, if I had control over what people were asking, that would not be one of the questions. But
well, I think it's better to address it head on, right?
Perfect.
But I think
that's
actually
what we wanted.
His framing was, I keep hearing and I keep reading.
Right. This is what's going on.
So is this what's going on?
This is what's going on.
He meant it. He didn't mean it in a bad way.
I think that's a fair question.
But when you're in a group of, you're in Israel.
When you're literally in the
Knesset.
But that was a moment of learning for not just him and all the other members, of the response that I thought the response by the speaker of the Knesset, his response was very simple. But then, of course, there was more to it. But he said, if we wanted to commit genocide, we would have already killed every single one.
Yeah.
And I think that was so profound. And he even thought about it. And when we were walking in the old city, he spent a lot of time on his own. He didn't want to, we were letting him be. And I remember we were walking when we left that meeting, he said, it makes a lot of sense now. That to me was enough to say, you know what, he may not agree with us on everything, but I know for a fact that when we come back, he will not be signing on to blanket statements accusing us of being horrible people, because that's what was going on. Like, that first week was rough. We had to fight for our Democratic caucus leadership team on October 7th as we're watching everything unfold on TV, right?
Yeah.
We're on the phone crying, calling them, saying we need to release a statement now. We waited until the following day, until they worked the language. And then there was also a point where they sent the statement to another member in our caucus who didn't agree with us on our issues, who was Palestinian, to make sure that she was okay with the statement. Where, mind you, this is before...
Not an Israeli soldier was in Gaza.
Before the response.
Literally, there was
saying,
before any response.
Maybe we need to run this by to make sure she's okay with it, because it just has the potential for contention because it has to do with Israel and because it has to do with Jews.
And then they made it about, about Palestinians and Israel. I'm like, no. We either release something calling out what's going on now, or we don't release anything
and supporting the Jewish
and supporting the
people.
Jewish community.
I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls people have fallen into of it should have been easy for everybody to say, oh yeah, slaughtering families and kidnapping people.
It shouldn't have
was
taken
bad.
24 hours.
The mayor of the city that we live
Pretty simple.
in took a month to say anything. So, and this is just a thing where on the left, on the Democratic side, I work on guns, gays, and abortion. I was the state director for Everytown for Gun Safety after the shooting in Tucson. I ran the National Latino Outreach Program at Planned Parenthood, started the LGBTQ caucus. And yet, because I support Israel and because I have said anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, well, you're not a real progressive. The gay Latino who works on guns and abortion, not a progressive. Every Republican thinks that I am like the Antichrist because I want to take away their guns and give people free abortions. And yet on the Democratic side, I have people that are like, well, because you support this, you are automatically exempt. Everything else you've ever done in your career and in your life, invalidated because of this.
Do you guys have any ideas of how to solve that issue broadly within the Democratic Party, that it's so difficult and taboo to be a progressive who also supports, the only democracy in the Middle East?
I get so many messages online of students asking and people in the community that are active Democratic Party activists who are like, what do we do, right? And my number one word of advice for them is do not leave. And then they look at me and they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, just because someone doesn't want you there does not mean that you give them that win and leave, because that is what they want. And we've been told if I got $1 for every time we were told, like, you're sure you want to stay in the Democratic Party, I'd be like super wealthy right now, because I get it. I just got it like 2 days ago. Someone's like, are you sure you don't want to like leave the party? No, I don't.
Yeah.
Why? Because those are my values. That's who I am. These are the things I believe in. These are the things we've been fighting for literally since we were 14 years old, right? Like, that's when he dragged me into politics. You can either blame him or thank him, I don't know. But when I was 14, and we care about LGBTQ, right? We care about all the things that Democrats care about. I refuse to let them win by saying, you know what, I'm offended by what they said. Yes, of course I'm offended, and of course I will call them out, but leaving does nothing.
Right.
I follow a lot of influencers who have been very vocal about how dare any Jew be a Democrat. Well, I'm sorry, how dare you ever even say that?
Yeah.
Like, just because I have a disagreement with a person on, like Daniel just said, you don't fit the box and they want you out of it, doesn't mean you get up and go. We've never won anything by doing that.
Yeah, when I had Congressman Richie Torres on the show, and he had a very similar sentiment of like, if we leave, we're just handing over the party to
the crazies.
Our
I don't like using that phrase.
Okay, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
And I think
Extremist.
Yeah.
And I think, to follow up, something that I always tell all of our Jewish friends who are eager to get involved but are sometimes too afraid to show up is literally just show up. I don't care if it's a city council meeting, school board meeting. We are being hit with resolutions, anti-Israel resolutions, at every level of government. And I told them, if you work at a university, run for the leadership there. We need to have a seat at the table. We need someone to be able to say what you're doing is wrong.
One of the things that I was really excited about when I first got elected was starting the LGBTQ caucus. And what that meant was having a seat at the table. making sure that we showed up even in places where we weren't welcome. And I think that's the thing, that if you are somebody who's upset and angry, then show up. One of the things that I had in my office the entire 6 years that I was in the State House was a poster. It's a pink triangle, and it said "Silence equals death." It was something that was used. The pink triangle was used in the Holocaust to identify gay men. Silence equals death was adopted by ACT UP, the group of AIDS activists who are fighting against the Reagan administration. But I think whether it's, you fighting against your literal life and death, whether you're in a concentration camp, whether you're, trying to figure out how we can get the government to do something on AIDS, silence is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. And I think far too often there are very loud voices, but they're a minority.
Yeah.
And we let them talk over us. And I joke with my sisters that just because you're louder doesn't mean you win.
All right.
And sometimes it means being uncomfortable. It means saying, if I'm not there, then everybody's going to say, well, everybody agrees with us because nobody was there to disagree.
Right.
And the other thing is, when we look at our party, we're the big tent. We're going to have disagreements. We're going to have fights. But when we look at where our core values are, it's about making sure that women have equal rights, that the LGBTQ community is protected, that we're giving people what they need to be successful and to thrive. So when we're talking about this issue, if we're the big tent, then we're going to have to accept that there are just always going to be people who disagree with us. And if we toss out the baby with the bathwater and say a pox on their houses because there's this, if you look at the squad in Congress, it is a small group and it's getting smaller. And yet everybody thinks, oh, well, the squad is taking over Congress. Nancy Pelosi said it best. They have their 4 votes and their 4 votes only. But if we give them more attention and if we keep buying into this idea, a lot of it is a paper tiger. And yes, they may have a lot of notoriety, they may have a lot of press, but if you look at the day-to-day, what's going on with the Democratic Party, there are a lot more people that are closer to Richie Torres than to Cori Bush. And I think that's the thing, that our party is not one that is uniformly anti-Zionist or uniformly anti-Jewish. I would argue that there are more Jewish Democrats than there are Jewish Republicans, because every, poll and every study has found that. But if we just let these folks kind of ramrod us and kick us out of the party, then we're going to not be there. We're not going to be a part of the conversation. And then they will have a party that doesn't include us. And we will no longer be the big tent that includes all voices.
Consuelo, I want to go back to something you mentioned, just show up, come to the meeting, come to the town hall. I think one of the barriers for a lot of people is they think, what am I going to do there? I'm going to sit there. Everybody's shouting. They might not even get to the thing. I'm going to stay home. Like, what do you say to that person?
I understand what that feels like. I started showing up to school board meetings for fun when I was in high school.
Oh, yeah. That's what a lot of high schoolers do. Yeah.
Very normal high school student. And I had no power. We came from a background where my dad was a construction worker. My mom gave up her career to take care of us. So I had no political power. I just knew that there was something that was going on that I didn't like. And I kept showing up. And then I realized that you make people uncomfortable when you show up to places that you are either asking questions or you don't belong. I think that at the end of the day, especially with today's politics, people want us to get exhausted. They want us to get to a point where we're so done with both parties that we just...
It's a strategy.
Yeah, it is a strategy.
Flood the zone.
Correct. Yeah, there's just so much going on. Like, what do I do? You just choose something that you care about. If it's education, go to school board meetings. If it's legislative, I just want to point out all of the work that Daniel and Alma did together, that Alma mentioned, mandating Holocaust education, all of that was done in a span of 6 years. So you can do so much. You just have to figure out what you want to do. But politics is all relationships, right? You can't show up. What I would say is don't show up and yell at people. Show up and introduce yourself, meet with them. That doesn't mean that the elected officials are going to, take your requests, but people notice when you show up. I do, because there's such few people who show up anywhere. I'm on a school board and in the state legislature. Yeah. I recognize people who show up because it's the same people. But guess what? The laws that are being created, the policies that we're passing in our schools are because of the same people who are showing up and voicing what they want to see.
So it really does make an impact.
It makes an impact.
not only is silence equals death, which is what the poster said behind me,
Right.
silence is also complicity. So if you're not showing up and you think that something is wrong and you don't say anything, then your elected officials are going to say, well, I only heard from the people that came to yell at us.
Right.
So the other people must be fine with what we're proposing. And
Yep.
I think that's the thing that people lose sight of, that it's not enough to just say, we're going to show up when, things are bad. We also need to show up so that people know who you are, have those relationships, because so much of what we've been able to do in a red state with a very conservative legislature is because we've built relationships. And these two are the most effective lawmakers in over 60 years as Democrats, not because Consuelo and Alma come in with a ton of power. It's because they have spent the time getting to know their colleagues, build the relationships, but they're speaking out and they're not being silent, when a lot of other people just choose, oh, it's a lot of work, I don't want to stick out, I don't want to be, noisy, I'm just going to sit here quietly.
And can I say one thing? This is for you. This is to you.
Yeah.
I remember when you started this show, I legitimately sent you a message. I was scrolling through Instagram. It's been a really rough freaking year. I think we can all agree. And I'm sitting and I saw the intro video that you did of this is a little,
It was like a little trailer for the show.
And I literally cried. And I thought about it. I was like, why am I crying? First of all, I've been very emotional this year, but I cried and I was like, holy shit, excuse me. But I'm like, people that have positions where you have followers, you obviously are very known in the community. People go to people like you to see what they're saying, right? And when there are people in positions that you have, influencers that are not saying anything, there is so much silence in your world of things.
Yeah.
And seeing that you're actually proud and very vocal about it. Clearly you have a show about it now, right? But that you are actually using your platform in a positive way. I was just really proud of you, because we don't see that. I just want to say thank you for doing this, because honestly, we need more of it.
Yeah.
And I feel that when Jews are silent, that is why we get so much of the hate. Just a little side note.
Couldn't agree with you more. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to understand, you've sort of touched on it a little bit, how influential is Daniel in the way that your lives have gone?
He ruined our lives.
We started crying.
So he was the reason why we're here. He got us involved, and
I bribed them with pizza.
You mentioned what they were when they were 13. You got them.
14 and started,
so what was that the first thing you brought them into?
He bribed us with pizza, literally.
Yeah, it was
To go do what? Knock
Volunteer.
on doors?
Knock on doors, call voters, host events.
He always empowered us to go do your own thing. Go, if you want to do something, do it. And he didn't also make it easy for us. And I think that people just assume that there's some sort of handbook that Daniel gave us because we're plotting to take over or something. And I'm like, if people only knew when we were 15, and there was no GPS on our phones, Daniel, when we first started, he would drop us off in a neighborhood and he's like, figure it out. I'll be back. And I'm like 15. So we just had to figure it out.
And Daniel didn't recruit us to run for office. Let's just
told him not to run.
Yeah, he discouraged
but
us.
we always have supported each other. And I don't think the whole political us being involved would have really happened if Daniel hadn't dragged us along with him, right? So he's always been the one to teach us that it's not about what we're doing now, but what comes after us. He's always taught us okay, yes, you're doing great things, but what are you doing to bring someone else with you, right? So we started this internship program where we mentor high school kids from our community. We pay them paid internships so that they can have the opportunity that we had. We're the perfect example. You bring one of the family members and likely the rest will follow, right? Yeah. And that's the thing we've seen over the years.
We've had generations of interns.
Yeah, we have.
Oh, that's cool.
Honestly, from Daniel's first school board, and now we have their cousins who are 13 years old and 14 years old.
We have Somali refugees that are Muslim who are knocking on doors for these two.
And mind you, when we went to this last recent election, we went to an event downtown and I was being protested at this event. They found out that I was there. The police had to escort me out of the building through the kitchen of the restaurant because I was not safe to be in the area. They were protesting me and I'm walking around with these, 6 or 7 black kids who are Muslim hijabi wearing who are with us, and they're looking at us saying, we don't understand why these people hate you guys so much. They're like, we don't, and people yelling at them, why are you with them? Come with us. You're with us, right? And they're so confused because they're like, we've known your family. Like my brother was your right? Like
they were calling us so
they were calling us
mind
racist.
you, white women were shouting at Alma mostly that she was racist, that we were racist, to brown women who have very visibly Muslim interns. And one of our interns told us, she turned and looked at us and said, why are these white women yelling at me? And I'm just like,
we don't know.
We'd all like to know the answer to that
they
question.
co-opted this movement because they feel like they're doing something.
Right. It's the white guilt thing.
Yeah, it's the white guilt.
But that just goes back to like Daniel. He's always like, have you found your replacement? Like we just talked about this. Do I know who's going to run for my seat that I can support? Not yet. I'm working on it. So if anyone watching wants to run, let me know. And you live in my area.
You heard it here.
At the end of the day, he's always saying, okay, what comes next?
I'm going to ask one more question, then we're going to get to the lightning round and wrap things up. You showed up originally for pizza, and you're talking about how difficult this work is and how important this work is. Can you pinpoint what it is that motivates you to keep, going through this slog every day?
It's the people that don't want me there. Keep motivating me. I'm serious. I mean, I don't have to be doing this job. I could go make money. I have two math. I'm a faculty member at Arizona State University. I've been a professor there for a few years. We have a side business. Like I do a lot. I don't have to be in this position. I do it because I feel it's the right thing to do. And when people don't want me there, it just encourages me to want to continue the work that I'm doing. So leave it at that.
Great.
For me, it's being able to be in a position where I can, even being in the minority, where I can actually make change. We're in a Trump presidency. My sister and I have had the most wins that Democrats have had in the last 60 years. So knowing that, yes, I'm not going to get everything that I want, but if I can help uplift other people who look like me and who normally don't get a voice and a seat at the table, that's what's kept me going. We live in our districts that we were born in. Right? We grew up in. I could live wherever I mean, not wherever I want, maybe not LA, but I can move, I can live in a different place. But my parents always taught us is the value was you go get an education, but never forget about where you came from. You come back and you help someone else.
And I think for me, it really goes down to a lesson that I learned when I was like 3 from my grandmother, who I don't think my sisters got a chance to hear from her as much as I did because she started having a lot of health challenges. She had a stroke. But when I was really young, she would always say, pon tu granito de arena, which in Spanish means putting in your grain of sand. This idea that no matter how big, how rich, how fat, how skinny, how poor, didn't matter who you were, you had a responsibility to put in your little grain of sand to try and make things better. And I think this was a value that she taught us when I was younger and has always been something that's been a foundational belief that whether it's, bringing them to knock on some doors to hopefully elect the right candidate or whether it's repealing no promo homo in 2019, anything that I'm doing it because I want to make a contribution, and that every piece and every contribution is valuable, because a lot of times I think we don't recognize the importance of the little things and the things that our interns do. Yes, it may not be as flashy or as exciting as, Alma passing a bill or Consuelo passing more bills than, any other Democrats have in 6 years. But they, as a 17, 18-year-old, are making an impact and trying to change their community for the better.
Something that you guys share in common with a lot of the guests on this show is that strong family foundation and like a really beautiful set of values that have guided you guys through your lives. So it's lovely to hear. All right, let's wrap things up. We're gonna do a little lightning round. We'll just we'll go boom, boom, boom. Every time I ask, we'll just go answer.
Oh no.
Okay.
Keep it short.
Oh no.
Oh, these are short
Sorry.
questions. Favorite Jewish holiday?
Hanukkah.
Why?
With so much darkness in the world, it brings a little light into it.
Beautiful.
Purim, because
Purim.
it's the gayest holiday.
What makes it the gayest holiday?
You get to dress up.
I would say the same as my sister. It's a really, I think it shows resilience, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
hey, there was not a lot that was left and they kept the light going on for those days, right? So that's always,
Love that. Challah, rip or slice?
Slice.
Rip.
rip.
We don't get a lot of slicers on this show. It's doing your own thing. What is the Jewish Latino food combo I never knew I needed?
Jalapeno jelly brisket.
We try to add I at least try to add a Mexican touch to a lot of the food that
I
I
love
have,
that.
especially if it's Jewish food, because sometimes it's a little bland. Don't
Sure.
tell anyone I said
Latkes
that.
with jalapenos.
Yes.
Very good.
Oh, those
and
are
Latkes
good.
with jalapenos.
Fresh jalapenos, not the pickled crap.
And chipotle sour cream. We've had a little bit of everything. Yeah.
cream.
No, it's it's the thing.
Love it. Delicious. Of you three, who's the funniest?
Who thinks they're the funniest? Who's actually the funniest?
Both?
I think Daniel's funny.
Yeah, Daniel's funny. I think Consuelo has really dry humor, and sometimes
Very
I can't tell
dry
if
humor.
she's kidding or being serious,
Yeah.
and I'm scared.
I like a dry humor. Who is the best communicator?
I would say that I end up being
He's
the
a facilitator.
Switzerland and the facilitator, because when you have two very strong, opinionated, young elected officials who are women, who are Jewish and who are Latina, there are a lot of thoughts and opinions, and they sometimes argue with each other, and I have to be the neutral Switzerland.
Okay. Last one here. I want you to each offer some words of encouragement. Consuelo, if you could offer some to Jewish students today, Daniel to LGBTQ Jews, and Alma to Jews who are fearful for standing up and being loud. Some words of encouragement.
We see you, we hear you, and we value what you have to say. Please show up.
I think there are so many things that I would like to say to folks, but the biggest one is don't let anyone push you out.
We have to stand up for each other, regardless of what is happening in the world. We must show up for each other and stand up for each other, and rather than tearing each other apart every time we get the opportunity, just really embracing one another and making sure that we're there, because believe me, it's a lonely world out there. And if we all start turning on each other, we're going to just, be completely alone in the world. And I would just encourage everyone to be a little more caring about others.
A little more caring. You heard it here, folks. Hernandez, thank you so much for being here with me today. This was really awesome.
Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias a las semanas y a la mano Hernández por volar desde Arizona solo para estar aquí conmigo hoy. Significa mucho para mí. ותודה לכולם שהצטרפתם אלינו היום. אני מקווה שכולכם היה חג פסח נפלא. You know the drill. Spread the show. Click the subscribe button on your podcast app and YouTube. Even if you're watching on JBS, we really need those numbers. So thank you. So happy to be back. Love you all. Catch you back here on the next episodio fantastico de Being Jewish with me, Jonah Platt.